Hey scholars, it's Miss Webb, and today we are going to do a new read aloud and read this really cool book called Yucky Worms. So, just to give you a little bit of insight, Miss Webb hates worms. I hate them. I think they're so yucky. I think they're disgusting little slimy creatures. So maybe I'll even learn some really neat things that worms do, and maybe I won't be so scared and yucked out by them either. So, today, while I'm reading, I want you to think, what new information did you learn from this book? You're going to think about, what new information did you learn from this book? So, here we go. Yucky Worms by Vivian French and illustrated, that means drawn by, Jessica Alberg. Take a look at the cover. I noticed on the cover that the title's made out of yucky worms. Ooh, let's see. Here's the first page. Yucky Worms by Vivian French. One day, when I was in Grandma's garden, Grandma dug up a slimy, slithery, wiggly worm. Ugh. Yuck, I said. Throw it away. Throw it away? Grandma looked horrified. Would you throw away one of your friends? You can't be friends with a worm, I said. You can't even tell which end is which. Yes, you can. Watch. Grandma put the worm down. It gave a kind of squirmy wriggle and disappeared really fast, pointy end first. As the rounded end vanished, Grandma said, there goes its tail. I bent down to look, and I could see it had left a little tunnel. Where did it go? I asked. Home, Grandma said. It's an earthworm. It lives underground. So as you can see here, there's an illustration of a worm, and there's different parts of the worm. This is called a diagram. This is called a diagram. I know it's a diagram because it has labels for the different parts of the worm. It says, this is my mouth where food goes in. Here is my brain, my esophagus where the food goes in next. Worms have 5 pairs of hearts. Whoa, that's something new. There's a pale ring found only on adult worms. Here's the crop where the worm stores its food. The gizzard where the food is ground down. The skin is covered in mucus for easier wriggling. Intestine, where goodness from the food is absorbed into the bloodstream. And this is my bum, where poop comes out. Yucky. It says, in most backyards, there will be about 15 worms in every square yard of soil. That's a lot of worms. But what does it eat? Dirt? I wanted to know. It eats tiny stones and bits of dirt, Grandma told me. But worms eat other things too, like rotting leaves and flowers and fruit and dead insects. They especially like eating at night when it's cool. The stones and dirt help to grind everything up in the worm's stomach, and then the worm poops it back out. They pull their food back down as they wriggle into the ground again. Worms come above ground to find things to eat too. Interesting. Grandma pointed at the flower bed. Look, can you see? I bent down and I saw what looked like a weird, long, curly worm made of dirt. That's worm poop, Grandma said. It's called a cast. You know, when you recycle things? Well, worms, they do it too. There's still a lot of goodness left in the things a worm eats. And when the goodness comes out again as poop, it helps plants to grow big and strong. And as the worms move around, under and on top of the soil, the poop gets spread around the garden. Can you see the poop? Right there. That's why worms are my friends. Grandma gave me a thumbs up. And it's not just their poop that's good for plants. The tunnels they dig loosen the soil so roots can stretch out and air and rainwater can get in. Wow, that's something new. But it's dangerous being a worm, Grandma said. I stared at her. Dangerous? I asked. She smiled at me. Lots and lots of animals think worms make the most delicious dinner. Uh oh. He has a shopping list and it says worm, 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 worm. Birds love them, and so do moles, badgers, frogs, hedgehogs, and foxes. Even some slugs eat worms. And human beings accidentally slice through them with spades and spike them with forks. It's a tough life. Cutting them in half doesn't hurt them, Grandma. I said. They just turn into two worms and keep on growing. Grandma shook her head. Poor worms. Lots of people think that, but it's not true. She put her fork down. Time for a snack. A worm's tail can regrow if it's cut off, but cutting a worm in half will kill it. That's interesting. Grandma had tea, and I had orange juice. Can I dig up a worm? I asked. If it rains, Grandma said, the worms will come up on their own. Worms breathe through their skin. They don't mind the soil around them being wet, but if their tunnels are flooded, they come up to the surface to move around more easily. I took a cookie. What if it doesn't rain? Grandma winked at me. We'll use the watering can and pretend. I finished my cookie as fast as I could. Can we trick the worms now? Ooh, he looks excited. He wants to see the worms come up out of the wet soil. Uh-oh, let's see what happens. Whoa, this is so cool. Grandma filled the watering can, and I watered the ground. Then I stood back. I didn't want the worms chewing at my shoes. Mm-mm. They only put their heads out. Grandma promised, and it will be a while before they do. When it's very hot and the soil gets too dry to slither through, a worm will wriggle down to where the soil is still damp, curl up, and wait for rain. When it's very, very cold, a worm will wriggle down even deeper below the frost level and curl up with the other worms for warmth. Grandma was right. I had time to eat two more cookies before she said, Look! Wow, I said. I could just see the tip of a worm above the ground. Now watch this. Grandma stamped her foot, and the worm disappeared. Wow. Did it see you? I asked. Grandma shook her head. Worms don't have eyes. They feel vibrations. And a thump like that might mean a hungry bird is a landing. Danger. Grandma dug her fork in the ground. Up came lots of dirt and wriggly worms. Ooh. She picked one up and washed it in the water can. Mustn't drop it, she said. They can't swim. Grandma put the clean worm on some paper and held it near my ear. I could hear tiny rustling noise. What's that? They're covered in little bristles, Grandma said. The bristles in their muscles help them move. These are the bristles, and this is a magnifying glass showing a close up. It says, a worm has rigid muscles all along its body. To move, it pushes its front end forward and uses the bristles to hold that end in place while the back catches up. The bristles on the back end keep the worm from sliding backward, while the front end tunnels forward again into the earth. I've got muscles too. I bent my arm so Grandma could see. If you've got so many muscles, she said, maybe you'd like to help me plant my sunflower seedling. Okay, I agreed. And then I thought of something. When I go to school on Monday, I'm going to say that I've got lots of new friends. Good idea, Grandma said. But I said, I might not actually say that they're worms. So now we have some tips on how to be a wormologist. Ooh. First, it says, look for worm casts in your garden or in the park. Leaves sticking up out of the ground. Worms on the surface after it rains. Then you can experiment by watering a dry patch of grass or dirt and watching to see if worms come up. Tapping on the ground to see if you can make a worm believe it's raining. Carefully digging up a forkful of dirt and counting how many worms you can find. A worm in the hand. When you pick up a worm, remember to be respectful. A worm is a living creature. Check how it feels. Is it smooth? Is it slimy? Can you feel the bristles? Watch how it moves. Is it still a youngster or an adult? Adults have a yellow ring around their body. Put the worm back on newly dug soil and watch how it wriggles away. Always wash your hands after touching worms. So I challenge you to become a wormologist and try those cool tips to see if you can observe a worm on your own. And also, I want you to tell me, what is something that you learned today that you did not know before about worms? We know that our main character, he thought that worms were yucky. And I know this from our title. I wonder how his opinion of worms changed. And I want to know maybe how have yours changed about worms. So I'm looking forward to seeing your answers. And you can also send me some cool pics if you want to become a wormologist. Bye, guys. Until next time.